Thanks everybody for joining us again, and just another exciting interview and fireside chat, if you will, with Dr. Dani McVety with Lap of Love. So this session, and for those of you listening, I am sure you're on the edge of your seat just like I am, because I can't wait to hear from one of the most successful people in our space. And the topic that we're going to talk about now is 5 tips. I want you to get your pens ready. 5 tips for growing a successful business. You started it, you had a mission, it started happening, it started playing out. All right, take over. Now what do we do?
How do we do it?
Now what do you do? Right?
Well, and let me preface this conversation with the fact that all of these are hard learned things. So this isn't something that I had the book. I now own all the books, but I didn't at the time have any of the books. And I, like everybody else, just like you guys as well, you learn these by working. And then a lot of these things you learn, and then you're like, oh, that's what that book was talking about. That's why it's important. Yeah. So Colleen, you and I sat and you helped me come up with these things. So number one, which is super easy and always the number one thing, should be people, is coming up and building the right team. And for me, that first conversation with Dr. Mary Gardner, her and I, you guys would be blessed to have a partnership, like that. It has been obviously life-changing for both of us. But also, she was and still is probably the one person that can give me feedback, besides my husband. Well, not even husband. Husband still does. They don't deliver it very well sometimes,
Right?
but they can give me feedback, and that I take with such an open heart. I remember when her and I first started actually publicly speaking, we would sit in the front seat of each other's talks, and we would write down the things that, like, there's filler words like or so or or those things that we do, and we would write these things down. Or I would tell her, like, hey, you got to stand up straighter. She'd be like, you need to make sure that you face the audience more. And it was amazing to have somebody like that, particularly at that stage in our careers where we were new veterinarians and we were growing something that there was no blueprint for. So to have people like that in your life that you can take feedback from, is just imperative. And of course, now when I say people, I mean a team of people.
Yes.
And we have such an incredible team of people. We are, my first 5 employees that we ever hired are still with us.
Oh,
it's just amazing, and they're so close to my heart. I know a lot of books that you'll read will say, don't become friends with your employees and with your team, but screw that. They're like my best friends. They are all my best friends. And I talk to them daily, and, that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But not only that, our leadership team, we have a very tenured leadership team. Our first 2 executive hires are, again, still with us. And and we've built a team around us, and we have all been so open with communication. And the reason why that's important, I want everybody to understand, is because you can give feedback to each other in a way that's constructive, and you can disagree with each other, which is very important. It's so important to be able to disagree with each other and to explain why, and to not be tagged by it or take things personally. Because really, at the end of the day, that's where growth happens, is by saying the things that really need to be said. And I'm really blessed to have those type of people. And then when I say the word people, it goes even further now, as we have a team of veterinarians and care coordinators that are called to this type of work. And people ask us this all the time. They ask every single one of you listening this, how could you do this work? How do you maintain a good culture? How do you keep everybody uplifted? And I always say that's the easy part, which is because you don't opt into end of life care unless you love it, and unless you feel that you have a calling for it. So when I say people, it's not just Mary anymore. It's not just our executive team. It's every single person that chooses to do this work, because at the end of the day, we're all in this for the same reason. We have the same mission and vision. I don't have to get anybody to buy into what we're doing or convince them to memorize the mission statement that we have. It's all, everybody lives that anyway. So that's number one, is the people.
So I want to dig into that, because I remember starting my business a gazillion years ago, and it was me, myself, and I, and my stepson. And I didn't have the funds to get a team. So, and have a team around me. So what I did was I tapped into some of my clients. I tapped into some people that were influential within the market, within the industry, and I created my own board, my own advisory board. And I ran everything by them. I ran my marketing and my ads, and I practiced on things in front of them, so that I still had a sounding board. So for all of our solopreneurs in IHPC, look out, you've got people that are running solo accounting businesses and people that are doing solo businesses of marketing or advertising or social postings for, but whatever it may be, you've got people out there who too are trying to run their own businesses, and band together. Go get them and say, hey, listen, I'll help you and you help me. And you can still create your own board. You can still create having the right people on your team. And I flash back to those quarterly meetings with a random group of people. And man, I learned a lot. They taught me a lot about what to do and what not to do. And it's invaluable. So even as solopreneurs, there's still a way you can have a board.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
a way.
There's a way that you can form an advisory committee or a board or just some group of people that you respect and admire, and that and that you can run ideas by. And I will say too that you have to be prepared to not agree with them always, and to be focused on what you're doing. I can't tell you how many people said, you'll never be able to do that. You'll never be able to make a business out of end of life care. You'll never be able to cremate pets for a living and make it a full-time job. So many people told me that when I was starting. So those people didn't get to be part of my board. It was very simple.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I didn't like them. It was just, okay, they don't get it. It doesn't click for them. That's fine. No problem. So, and that actually goes into the point number 2, which is knowing your product, because the people that buy your product are probably the most important people to have on that board.
Yes.
Is the people that are buying, so even if you call up, one of your clients that you just clicked with, and we all have them because of what we do, we click with people. And if you call them up and say, can I just run something by you? I'm thinking about adding this. I'm thinking about this wording or this phrasing. I think you will find people are very, very willing to help. And that is something that I should have known a long time ago, which is how willing others are to help you. I tend not to be the kind that asks for help ever. Never mind, I'll do it myself is probably a motto that I have for my life.
Yeah. It'll go on your epitaph. Never mind, I'll do this myself.
Never mind, I'll do it myself. Yeah, that is a, and that's fine. I think that your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness, so that's okay. But you have to know your product, what people are paying for. People are literally separating from money that they have worked for. And I think that that's absolutely imperative, that you know exactly who's buying that product and really what that product is. And, we said it before, but our product at Lap of Love, and for all of you, it's probably the same, is an experience.
Right.
An experience is what you're providing. And that experience has to be perfect from the moment that they hit your website to the moment that you answer the phone, to the moment when you send a sympathy card. That whole thing, that is your product. It's not just the delivery of euthanasia solution. So knowing that product and knowing what it's not, right? You're not there to, I don't know, sell a paw print. That's not your product. If you charge additional for a paw print, that's fine, but maybe you look at it one day and say, you know what? We're not going to charge extra for the paw print because it demonizes the experience that a family has. And I'm not saying that's bad. Again, I just mean, for me, the experience that a family has is everything. So I don't want to say, you know what, we can do a paw print. It's an additional $20. Is that okay with you? Right. Even if I said it beautifully and wonderfully, it just doesn't, if I'm a client, I just don't like that. Increase your base price by $25 and include the paw print for free. We use an air dry clay, Model Magics, no secret. I've used I sent off to China for clay. I sent off to India one time I got every clay that exists. I don't know, 24 months ago, on the market, and tried to find anything else that would work better. And air dry, Model Magic clay is still the best. And allows us to not charge for it. And if a family wants something, look, the clay paw prints are a little bit better, quality. And if you want to do that, then that's great. The crematory can do it. But the other reason why we use that, totally a side note here, but is because people have to bake them. And I did that at the beginning, and I would leave the baking instructions with people. And I had a couple people call back and say, I burned it. Oh my gosh, what do I do? And I'm like, oh, so I want to be able to leave families with that paw print, because that's part of what they see. That's part of what's left in their home after I leave. And again, that supports the entire experience. And, people can say that's not a good paw print, but hey, the experience that the family has was good.
And I think this goes back in the business philosophy and in the business world of what's your 30-second elevator speech? Because if somebody says to you, what do you do? What is laugh a lot?
And you go, well, we're a home-based euthanasia business. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, woo. Sorry, I
Right.
ask me, what do you do if I say, well, I cremate animals? That's not what I do. That is not what I do. And my 30-second elevator speech is, I help pet parents on the worst day of loving a precious animal, of which then they will say, tell me about that.
Right.
You want them to do. So it's selling the sizzle. It's not selling the product. It's because, as you said, what we do, it's very simple. The procedures we do are very simple. What's complicated and complex, it's not complicated, it's complex, is the life experiences that have got them to the death day.
Yeah.
And that is where we want to give the permission. And so we do that in the experience. That's where it's at. But we only know that when we ask them what their expectations are, what's meaningful to them, what did they love, all the questions. So okay, give me 3. What's number 3?
Okay. Number 3 is follow through. I know. Tell me about it.
We have to follow through.
I know. And I am like the worst on this, because I'm what they call a visionary, and I have got all the ideas. 5 of them are good ideas. The other 100 are not good ideas. And the follow through is the most important part of putting these ideas into practice, right? And actually doing them. And I can't just come up with an idea of like this wonderful, great virtual summit that we're going to invite all of our employees to, blah, blah, blah. We've got to have it actually done. At the very beginning, when you're growing a business, it's all on you, 100% on you, because you can't afford to hire an accountant sometimes. So you got to do your own accounting. You can't afford to have somebody else, manage an event. You got to do it. You got to be the one that puts all your little tchotchkes in a tote, and then you drive to the event, and then you unpack and you put your tablecloth on and you put your flowers there, and you put your banner up. Like, that's on you. And then eventually, if you're blessed enough, you will be able to afford to hire somebody else. But at that like, I can't tell you how many times I've had, somebody come to me with a business idea. I'm like, what have you done? I haven't done anything yet. Well, what's your plan? I don't know, but I've got this great idea. I'm like, that is awesome. You have got to you got to go get a business card. You have to start talking to people, well, I'm going to talk to this big group and that group and this group and that group. That is great. But the groups don't get you clients. Talk to your clients, get clients. Don't let somebody else, don't pass the buck to somebody else for them to preach who you are. They ain't going to do it. How many times do you preach about another company? Not unless they've served you well. So my son actually told me this a couple of days ago. He's like, you know what, Mom? I read this quote, and it said that you should never brag about yourself, because if you're worth bragging about, someone else will do it for you. I'm like, that goes in business, most importantly. You don't have to sell yourself. I mean, listen, sometimes you do, right? I mean, sometimes you got to walk into a clinic and you have to talk to them about the experience that you provide. But more importantly, one of their clients, and I'm going to use a Colleen line right now. You take a sympathy card that the client wrote. I'm sorry, not sympathy card. A thank you card that the client wrote to you. You copy it, and then you go into the clinic and say, I just wanted to show you something that your client shared with me. And that is a Colleen thing.
Yes, it is a Colleen. Oh no, look at that. I love it.
Oh yeah, I just used that earlier today. I was like, Colleen says blah blah blah. So, but that is part of the follow through, which is bringing that product, bringing the idea, bringing the mission to other people, and continuing to do it. Like, you cannot just sit in your office and just think, when's the business going to come to me? When's it going to come to me? Go out and do it. Make it happen.
Absolutely. And you know what? I love what you're saying there, because too, when I speak with people, it's like, okay, what did you tell the people you're going to do? And then did you do it? And you got to be consistent with it, because if today you feel like not sending that sympathy card when your standard operating procedures says the sympathy card goes in the mail the day of death, okay, then did you send the sympathy card? Well, I thought I could just do it tomorrow. Because about the time you go, well, I just thought I would, then well becomes a slippery slope. And now all of a sudden expectations are gone and people don't know what you're about. You're not consistent. And so then things do become a slippery slope, and you've got trouble. So because our world is so about tell me what to expect and then deliver what you just told me. Do that thing. You've got to do it. And when you do it better than everybody else.
Yes.
Better.
Yeah. No, you're right. And do it consistently. Just like you said, people want consistency. That's why Starbucks, that's why you go pay double for a latte than you would anywhere else, because you know that double tall soy latte that you order at Starbucks is going to be the same in Tampa as it is in Seattle, as it is in LA.
Yeah.
It tastes the same. And so, and like that consistency is very important. You know, if a client comes to see you, we know that for every family we see, that family talks about us to 3 other families.
Yep.
Statistic, data that we know. And we know that those 3 people that they talk to are going to expect the exact same consistent experience. So in that sense, we don't give everybody scripts. Our team doesn't have scripts that they have to follow, because when you call AT&T or whomever, like if they're just oh, that is so bad, that must be so frustrating. It's not about that, but it's about, again, hiring the right people that have the right why and the right mission, and then from there the love and compassion comes out, and that experience is consistent for them.
Exactly. So true. And that will get you light years, especially if you're trying to partner with other veterinarians in your community, to get them to trust you so that they can send their families to you. And the last thing that they want to have happen to them is left hanging when they told a family they'll do this, this, and this, and then you didn't do this, this, and this. Yeah. And that reflects poorly on them. And that's you can't, you've got to be consistent. You got to.
And we'll take it a step further. Like, so tell me how you're consistent. Well, we're consistent even if things don't go perfectly. So, we help between 5,000 and 7,000 families per month right now, and that just keeps going up. But maybe 1 or 2 per month will end up they'll end up on my desk because something went wrong. And even just this morning, I was emailing with a client that it just didn't go perfectly. He didn't understand why the doctor couldn't find a vein. And, and he told me in his email, he said, I really want to pay for this, because our thing is, if we didn't do what we said we were going to do, which is give you a peaceful experience, there's no charge. And you guys, our doctor did nothing wrong. And the client even said in the email, I know she did nothing wrong. I was just really wrapped up in the emotion. I didn't understand. And she could have done a better job explaining what happened. That's the lesson that we can all take out of this. But at the end of the day, we did not provide a peaceful experience. And I told them, like, this is just what we do, so we're not going to charge you, and honored that you would consider using us again for your next pet, which he said he would, and so I just said, that's just what we do. And to me, that prevents a negative, again, and it's not why, but I just mean, this is a reason to be consistent, that prevents a negative Google comment. It prevents a negative comment back to their clinic. And at the end of the day, that is more valuable than charging him for an experience just because he wants to pay for it. Yeah. So it's important to be consistent with that. And so then he doesn't think he's being, singled out or anything. And I just say, look, we didn't do what we said we were going to do. If I said I'm going to give you a hamburger and I gave you a chicken sandwich instead, it's not what I said I was going to do. I'm sorry, my fault, I love
about you on that one, Dani, and I think this is so true for good business owners. I have such a girl crush on Brene Brown. Oh my gosh. Right? And in the beautiful words of her, we got to lean in and have tough conversations sometimes. We got to rumble sometimes. And we got to say, we got to be vulnerable and say, we didn't give you what you expected. And gosh, for that, we're sorry. Not, well, you know, that wasn't our fault. And
Yeah.
so sorry that that didn't happen for you. And, you know, but you got to lean in, you got to rumble, you got to have, and by rumbling, I mean, just have tough conversations and be open to that. Be
Mhm.
open to that.
Yeah. Undefensively.
Yeah,
Open. You know?
exactly. Okay, next tip.
Yeah, well, that's a good lead into the next one, which is saying yes or no confidently and being confident about what you're doing. And that also really goes as a doctor, I'll tell you that. I mean, even the complaint that I, was handling over the past couple of days, this literally, I wish I could read this quote. I'm sure I had it somewhere. Now it's going to take me a little bit to get back to it. But this guy literally said, had she confidently explained to me what was happening, I would not have felt so bad. And
Oh,
it goes in business, leadership, everything, which is you have to shut your mouth and listen to what's going on, take time to rumble it through your mind, and then be able to confidently say, we're doing this or we're doing that. And somebody said that to me a long time ago. It was a spouse of one of my employees actually said to me at a Christmas party. He was like, you are so confident in the decisions that you make and when you make them. And I'm like, well, I'm so glad it appears that way, because shaking in my boots half the time, making sure I'm making the right decision, but on the outside, you need to make sure that you are confident. Just like I think that one other talk that we did, I shared, I, at the very beginning, I said yes to this advertising thing that I shouldn't have said yes to. And I had to go back and say no. And I remember, we all have these stories, but knowing that, I'm not ever going to do that again. And I
yeah.
need to make sure that I say yes or no and stick to it, and be very clear
Yeah.
on.
You know, I had a conversation with a gentleman earlier today, and he was saying that exact same thing. He said, you know, when you're confident, you become the authority.
Yeah.
And, you know, even in that situation, I'm just going to role play, and I'm not going to use any of the words right with the situation you're talking about, just to say, listen, sometimes this happens where we miss a vein. And so right now what I'm doing is I'm doing blah, 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 still soft, yet very confident.
Yep.
And you're telling me what's going on. I always say the one thing that costs us nothing costs us everything, and it's communication. Tell them what's going on, because they are so scared right now. They don't. They're in this fight, flight, freeze thing going on in their head, and then can't find a vein or whatever the scenario might be, and it's just then it goes to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
Could have been alleviated with a little bit of communication.
Yeah. It's stopping. If you think of a bus going down a hill, just going down that hill, you can't stop the bus once it's halfway down a hill. You can't stop somebody from freaking out once you're down there. You have to stop it at the beginning, which is an immediate conversation, just like you said, and literally this guy wrote in an email, he's like, I just wish you would have said this. And it was basically what you said, which is, sometimes this happens. Elderly pets have delicate veins, and we just can't get it in our normal route. Therefore, I'm going to use a different route. It's not a peripheral vein, so it's going to take a little bit longer than it normally would have, but this is very normal. And as you can see, she's confident, or she's peaceful, and blah, 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 blah. It's very simple, and I will tell you again, Colleen and I didn't know this. I'm putting words in your mouth, Colleen. We didn't know this. I don't know about you, Colleen, but all these books, literally, there's Persuasion, The Power of Presence, The Like Switch. I mean, all of these down here, this row is all communication books.
Absolutely.
So, and I always say, I'm not a master of this. I'm a student of it. And I love learning about it. I love learning how you have good presence. I love learning what makes people appear confident, right? Because fake it till you make it. So, I think it's important to understand that not all of us are born with these things. We just learn it, and we learn it little by little by little.
Well, not only do we learn it, but we're mindful and conscious of learning it, because, when I leave a situation, whether it's a tough situation or it's a little bit more of a comfortable situation, I still debrief in my head, and I ask myself two questions. Did I like how that felt? Meaning my communication and the tone and the energy and the vibe and all that kind of stuff. Did I like how that felt? And the second question is not what did I do wrong, because we're such fragile human beings, especially with our caretaker mentality and our caregiver mentality. We're so fragile in that area that the next question I ask myself is, what will I do different next time to have a better outcome? And you have to ask yourself the question. Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So you have you have to debrief with yourself, and don't beat yourself up. There's enough other people to do that. Okay, they'll do that for me. I need to say to myself, what went well there and what will I do different next time? And let me tell you something, if I go, that felt like crap, which I know that's how you learned, Dani, because that's how I learned. And it's like, oh, I'm not going to do that one again. That one didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
Right?
Very much. Oh, yeah. And my favorite phrase is from Wayne Dyer, which is, I just want to be better than I used to be.
Right?
Yeah.
I always tell your team when I do work with them, I always tell them, I say, I'm going to use really poor grammar so you remember what I say. And I said, here's going to be our goal for the next few days of being together. By the time we get done, we're going to be more better. Okay? I want
Better.
you.
I love it.
That's all I want, more better. Okay?
I love it. It's so true though, right? Let's just be more better. That's it. A little bit better.
Okay, what's our final?
Okay. Our final one is being responsible. And part of that is being accountable also. So I know you and I feel like it's just something that you have to carry around everywhere you go, which is it ain't anybody else's fault. Like no one else's fault. And I was talking with a family member. We have a ton of family in town right now. And even literally last night, one of my family members was like, well, who hired that person? And I was like, I did. And literally like it is always goes back to you as the business owner, the business operator, the person that makes the decision. You cannot blame it on anybody. If your financials aren't in order or whatever. And look, I have human resources for dummies and corporate finance for dummies right here. Like, I don't know any of those things. So I pick up the book and I read them sometimes. And because I know it's all going to fall on me no matter what. I mean, it's nice to be able to share the load sometimes, but at the end of the day, like you've got to understand that it does really all go back on you. So lean on your advisory board, lean on those people that you trust to give you guidance. And I don't always think it's a good idea to have, to have somebody, I don't know, in accounting give you, that's not a client of yours, give you advice on what your wording on your website needs to be, right? So when we say this, we mean having the right people in the right place at the right time, and in our company, we call it the right people, the right seat. So you could have the right person, but in the wrong seat, right? Like there are people that work for you that may be amazing, wonderful, like they're the awesome people. They're just not in the right seat. And you don't always need to form a seat just to have that one person, right? I mean, sometimes there's just not the right seat in the company at the time. But I probably shouldn't be the one saying that because I do whatever I can to save, people and the relationships that we have in the company. And we really do, I think, a good job of bending around some people, even if it's not a strength, that they may have. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you have to be accountable for those decisions and responsible and making sure that you have the money, right? Like you can't go into a venture and you don't know how you're going to pay for it. Yeah. I'm all about saying yes and then figuring it out later. I'm all about that. But you cannot sign the piece of paper and promise someone else you're going to do something without having the right funding or the right approval or the right knowledge on really how you're going to execute on an idea. You can't jerk someone else around like that. So you have to be responsible to make sure that you're making the right decisions at the right time.
And I love what you're saying too, because it's also being accountable and responsible to the business and how you're going to advance it and what makes sense. And here's where I'm going with this. It's a little bit out on a tangent, but if our prime working time is from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m, let's just say, because that's when families need us and that's when we need to be there, then that's when we need to be working. Okay. I'll never forget. And I was always such a stickler about this, because if it's working hours, then we're going to be doing things that are advancing the business, period. Okay. So one of my girls would go, hey, I'm going to run over to the bank at 3:00. I'm going to run over to the bank and make a deposit. I go, no, because then you do the drive-through and then it's chit chat. And there's a drive-through. You can drop it off tonight and there's no chit chat. You drive through, you drop it off. Let's go. But it was little things like that I was saying, we got to do what we got to do to advance the business, you say right people, right places, and the right things throughout the day too. Mm-hmm. You got to advance your business.
Yeah, it is. And you have to know how to make those decisions. on a day-to-day, literally a day-to-day business. And I guess, I think some of that's just ingrained in me with how I grew up, raised by two entrepreneurs. I mean, I don't remember the last time that I read like a fiction novel, and not that I'm proud of that by any means. I just mean, I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids, another one on the way. And like every moment of my time is valuable to me. And I have a lot of time down the future, when I choose to do it, that I will read fiction novels. But right now, every moment of my time I spend with my family, talking to my family, or if I have a moment alone in the car, it's reading a business book, but not
Yeah.
reading, listening to a business book.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't read these books. I listen to them and then I buy them as trophies on my shelf because I like to have them on my shelf. But, yeah, I just like to have the little trophies. I still have all my veterinary textbooks too back there. I can't let them go. But it is, you really have to have that mentality, Colleen, of every moment of your time is valuable. And I remember I said, a good friend of ours, I won't say her name right now, but we were sitting, she's still in the IHBC, and we were sitting at the very first bigger conference you guys had. And she's like, well, how do you say no to people that, call you after 5 p.m.? I'm like, I don't say no. I never say no. I never say no. Why would you ever say no to a family that wants to pay you to come do something that's really easy and valuable? And I did that. I lived my life like that for the first few years, which is I didn't say no. And then I didn't want to say no, so I hired somebody else. And then I didn't want to say no and not answer a call, so I hired Rose to help answer the phone. And Rose is still with me. Rose's mom works with me, and when you want to talk about being responsible, that was the biggest, scariest hire I ever made, which was my first one. And it was bringing somebody on to help answer the phone. Because again, I didn't want to, I didn't, like, if I didn't do that, the business wouldn't grow. We're talking about growing business. If I didn't bring somebody on and help answer the phone, every time I got out of helping a family, I missed 5 calls.
Yeah.
And I had to do that in order to grow the company. And I could have said no and just be stagnant, and I would help 40 to 50 families a month for the rest of my life, and that's fine. But at the same time, I was throwing my kids in the car on the weekends and the evenings, and I was sticking an iPad in front of their face and saying, babe, I'll be back in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It just like, but that's what I did. And now, because I've made those decisions to grow, now I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel like, of course, there's tons of things you do differently, but I feel like I was responsible enough at the beginning to care for the business and to make those really tough, hard decisions on hiring, on bringing somebody on being responsible for somebody else. Like I was responsible for Rose putting food on her table. That was a really big deal to me, because what if I couldn't afford to pay her? What if the business didn't continue to grow? I just decreased my income by the amount that I paid her in salary. I just took that hit. Now, what if I can't afford to do that? And so these big, huge decisions that you either make and you grow, or you don't make and you flatline. There's nothing wrong with flatlining. If you're making enough money, if you love your life, if you have consistency, if you are okay saying no when clients call you, that is fantastic. And we are all so blessed to be in that position. There's just the other alternative is to grow and, something bigger comes up, but that's not for everybody. I definitely understand that. That's not for everybody.
And the conversation I've had with some of our colleagues too, Dani, is as they share their blessings and sometimes their exhaustion of being so busy, some of them I turn around and I say, then it sounds to me like your prices aren't high enough. Raise your prices. Because if you raise your prices and you can help half the families and still make the same and relieve some exhaustion and some stress and some fatigue and all that kind of stuff, then do that. Because at the end of the day, the most important person in that equation is still going to be you, and you've got to take care of you. So another part of being responsible is not to wear yourself out and to make sure you're priced right. And let's face it, not everybody is our client. Not everybody is. Okay.
I know, that's such a hard thing for us veterinarians to do. Oh my God.
So
it was so hard for me. When I first started, I was 195. And it was so hard for me to break that 200. I was like, oh, but people aren't going to be able to afford it. And what I'm going to do. And what I found too, is that the more we grew and the more we helped people, and even we've had to inch up the price for that reason. We just have to, because our doctors are demanding more pay. and health insurance costs more, and everyone wants a 401k. So we've got, so these expenses, just like that's how you pay for those things, is by bringing in and generating the revenue that it takes to pay for them. Yes. And it is a very scary thing for us to do that. But I've also found that the more that we do and the more that money that we make, the more we give away. Right. We give away so many appointments. Every doctor has charity appointments. We never say no to a doctor giving charity appointments away. They walk into a home and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a Denny's server that just pulled the last $2 out of her apron to pay for me. I'm like, this is on me. You don't have to pay. And like the gratitude, we give more appointments away now than we ever have. And that will continue to go on. And we're actually starting a foundation, as you know, to help other people that can't afford this, because we receive, people always donate to us, in memory of their pet. And so we're working with you guys on forming a foundation that's going to be able to help other people, even not through us, through Apple Love, from all of you guys, that your families can help benefit from, from just donations that we receive. That's what we're working on right now.
I tell you what, we're going to end this interview right there, because that was a beautiful teaser to keep everybody hanging, because I know just enough about this, and I'm going to tell you, y'all all going to love this. Y'all going to love it. So we're going to tap into that on our next interview and just hear a bit more about that. So once again, Dani, so gracious with your time, so gracious with what you share with us, and so appreciated from all of us. So
love you to death, Colleen. No pun intended.
Or so. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Thank you.